My son is getting married the day after tomorrow. To the right person.
He was 2 days away from marrying the right woman when he heard a silver tray hit the floor and saw the necklace of the girl who vanished 7 years ago. By the end of that night, 200 guests would sit in silence as he exposed a secret his own family had buried and destroyed the wedding everyone thought was inevitable. At 11:14 p.m. on a Thursday in Seoul, Kang Junho arrived at the Grand Hanul Hotel with his jacket button undone for the first time in 2 years. It wasn't distraction. It was passive resistance, the only kind of protest an heir to the Kang group learns to cultivate without anyone noticing. The wedding was set for Saturday. The lobby smelled of white lily and corporate strategy. He needed to see the venue, or at least that's what he told the assistant carrying the folder of contracts. The truth was simpler and less confessable. He needed a place where no one knew him by his last name. He entered through the service wing by mistake. A door that should have been locked was left ajar, and that's exactly when he heard the sound. The sound of a silver tray hitting a ceramic floor has a specific quality. It isn't a thud. It's a cascade. Metal, dishes, silverware, and in the middle of all of it, the sudden silence of someone holding their breath waiting for the reprimand. Junho stopped in the hallway of the industrial kitchen. A woman was crouched on the floor, collecting what had fallen. White auxiliary uniform, hair pulled back in a makeshift bun that let a few strands escape at the nape of her neck. Her hands moved quickly, methodical, with the efficiency of someone used to solving problems without drawing attention. He was going to leave, was going to turn around, find the right door, get back on track with the night's agenda. Then she turned her face to reach a fork that had rolled farther away, and the fluorescent light of the kitchen caught her neck. The necklace was simple, a thin silver chain with a small wing-shaped pendant, one half of a pair. The other half had been for 7 years inside a small box at the back of his office drawer because Junho had never been able to throw it away and had never found a good explanation for that. He recognized the necklace before he recognized the face. But the face came right after. Seo Yuna. She froze. Not the freeze of surprise, the freeze of someone who recognizes a voice they've spent years trying to forget and realizes in one exact second that the effort was useless. She rose slowly, turned even more slowly. Mr. Kang. Not Junho, Mr. Kang. 7 years and the title arrived before the name, clean and surgical as a closed door. They had met on the balcony of a different hotel, in a different autumn, when Junho was still the second son of President Kang and not the heir to the Kang group, before his older brother had left the company and the family had reorganized all its expectations onto his shoulders. Yuna had been 22, working at a small restaurant in Mapo, and had appeared on that balcony because the main kitchen was overcrowded and the manager needed someone to arrange the appetizers for the upper floor. She arrived with a tray of John and found Junho sitting alone in a garden chair, tie loosened, staring at the Han River as if he owed it something. "You're not at the party," she observed without thinking. "Neither are you," he replied. They stayed there for 40 minutes. She talked about her father, who taught mathematics at a rural school and had a heart condition the doctors called stable in a tone that suggested otherwise. He talked about being invisible within a family where invisible was the best one could hope for. At the end of the night, he gave her half of the necklace he wore, a gift from his grandmother split in two in a story he told with the tone of someone who doesn't usually tell stories, and said the other half would stay with him until she decided what to do with it. She decided to stay with him for almost a year. Then she disappeared. The kitchen was empty at that hour, just the two of them, the smell of bone broth simmering on the industrial stove, and those 2 meters of distance that seemed to carry the density of 7 years inside them. "You work here," Junho said. It wasn't a question. It was him organizing reality out loud. Kitchen auxiliary, 2 years now. Before that, Yuna collected the last pieces of silverware from the floor, placed them on the tray with excessive care, the attention of someone who needs to look at something that isn't the face of another person. Other restaurants, some night courses. I take care of my father. Life happened. "Yuna, Mr. Kang, you're getting married the day after tomorrow." Her voice came out steady, almost impressive. "I'm working. That's the situation, and it's simple." "It isn't simple." "It is to me." A lie. He could see it in the way she held the tray, the knuckles of her fingers slightly white. He took a step toward the exit, stopped, looked at the necklace one last time. "You still wear it." Yuna didn't answer, but her hand rose almost involuntarily and touched the pendant for half a second before dropping again. Junho left the kitchen, but the night's agenda, the contracts, the event space, the assistant with the folder had completely lost its meaning. The name Han Mire appeared in the engagement documents, always accompanied by a portfolio of assets. She was the daughter of President Han of the Seon Group, and the marriage was exactly what it seemed, an alliance between families who had decided that a merger was more efficient than competition. Junho didn't hate Mire. She was intelligent, composed, and probably as unenthusiastic about the arrangement as he was. The problem wasn't her. The problem was that Junho had spent 7 years believing Yuna had left because she had chosen to leave, that the disappearance was a decision, perhaps the weight of the difference between them, perhaps something he had done or failed to do, perhaps simply the world being the world. The next morning he called Park Se-hun, the only member of the advisory team he trusted not out of corporate loyalty, but out of a matter of character demonstrated over years of small, inconvenient honesty. I need you to find something, Junho said. What kind of something? A contract or something like it, signed 7 years ago involving my mother and a woman named Seo Yuna. Se-hun was quiet for 3 seconds. You think it exists? I don't know, but I need to know if it does. Yuna was cutting mushrooms when Chai Bomi, the older cook somewhere in her 60s, white hair tied in a red scarf, and the only person in the hotel who called everyone by their first name regardless of hierarchy, leaned her elbows on the counter and looked at her with the expression of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. That man last night, I saw through the pantry window. He was a guest who came through the wrong door. He was the groom, said Bomi. Kang Junho, I saw him on television last week. A pause. And you went white as tofu. Bomi Ioni. I'm not asking anything, just observing. Yuna cut another mushroom. He and I knew each other a long time ago. It was nothing. Everything's fine. Bomi looked at her for a moment. Everything's fine is what people say when it isn't. Then it's almost fine. More honest. Bomi straightened, grabbed a pan. Your father called earlier, said last month's tests came back with good results. Yuna stopped cutting, closed her eyes for a second. Really? Really? So today you can have your existential crisis with a bit more peace of mind, since the medical emergency is on hold. Despite everything, Yuna laughed. Bomi had that effect, the ability to make reality slightly more bearable simply by naming it without drama. Se-hun called at 4:47 p.m. I found it, he said. It isn't a formal contract. It's an agreement documented on the personal legal office letterhead of your mother, signed by Seo Yuna and witnessed by her driver at the time, a man named Oh Geun-soo, who retired 4 years ago and lives in Suwon. Junho stood still at the hotel room window. Below, Seoul kept happening without consideration for what he was feeling. What does the document say? That in exchange for Seo Yuna's voluntary and permanent withdrawal from Kang Junho's life, the Seo family would not lose the rural property where her father lives, a small house in the Chungcheong countryside that had, at the time, a debt that your mother's legal office had quietly acquired weeks before. Clean blackmail, no ugly words, just facts and consequences. Does Oh Geun-soo still have a copy? He said he kept it because it felt wrong and he couldn't throw it away. His words. Jeonjo hung up, stood looking at the river in the distance. Felt something that wasn't anger. The anger would come later, cold and usable. What he felt first was a kind of heavy clarity, the kind that arrives when a question you've carried for 7 years finally has an answer. And the answer is both worse and better than you'd imagined at the same time. The engagement dinner was set for 7 p.m. in the main hall of the Grand Hanul. 200 guests, controlled press at the entrance, white flowers on every table. Yuna and the kitchen team would be responsible for the appetizers during the initial cocktail hour. 40 minutes of circulation before everyone sat down. She knew this and spent the entire afternoon calculating route geometry, how to serve the entire hall without passing near the central tables where the Kang family would be seated. The plan failed at minute 23. The woman who approached her in the side corridor had the exact bearing of someone who had learned that physical presence is a form of power. Immaculate hair, pearl necklace, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kim Soo-yeon, Junho's mother. What a curious coincidence, she said, in a voice low enough not to attract attention, but loud enough to ensure Yuna caught every syllable clearly. You're still around. Good evening, Mrs. Kang, Yuna replied. The tray in her hand was level. Her hands weren't trembling. She had rehearsed this kind of composure over years, and it worked, most of the time. My son is getting married the day after tomorrow, to the right person from the right family. A calculated pause. I hope you understand that some things don't change, regardless of where life takes us. I understand quite well how certain things work, ma'am. Kim Soo-yeon opened her smile by 1 millimeter. Good. Then you also understand that it would be a shame if your situation here at the hotel became complicated. A report of inappropriate conduct from a support staff member during an event of this magnitude can have lasting consequences. It was a threat, clean, dressed as casual conversation, but a threat. And it was exactly at that moment that Park Ji-soo, the head of event services, a woman with no patience for politics and enormous patience for efficiency, appeared down the corridor and announced in a clear voice, "CO Yuna, the shrimp appetizers need to go out now or we'll lose the cocktail timing." Yuna looked at Kim Soo-yeon, "Excuse me, ma'am," and left. She didn't see Junho standing at the entrance of the corridor, 3 meters away, who had heard every word. Junho entered the hall at exactly 7 p.m., greeted those who needed to be greeted, found Mirai in conversation with investors, and exchanged with her a look that contained, beneath the formality, a mutual understanding. Neither of us asked for exactly this. At 7:42 p.m., when the guests were seated and the opening speeches were beginning, someone at the Han Group advisory table raised their voice. Hunyo didn't know the aide, but he knew the type who receives instructions and executes them with efficiency and no conscience. "There's an irregularity with one of the hotel staff members," the man said, in a tone that intended to seem concerned. "I believe the event would be more appropriate if she were replaced for reasons of professionalism." It was vague enough not to be a direct accusation. It was specific enough for everyone at the head table to understand it referred to someone, and that someone had asked for this to happen. Kim Soo-yeon didn't look at her son. She maintained her posture. Junho set his water glass down slowly. "What irregularity?" "Inappropriate conduct during service." "Can you be more specific?" Uncomfortable silence. "Mr. Kang," his mother said with the soft tone of someone trying to close a subject, "it isn't necessary to involve yourself in the hotel's operational matters during your own—" "Sehun," said Junho. Park Sehun, seated 2 places to his right, opened the envelope he had been holding since he arrived at the hall. "This is a document," said Junho, standing now, his voice calm with the kind of calm that takes years to learn. "Signed 7 years ago by my family's personal legal office. Witnessed by a Mr. Oh Gyun-soo, who is available to personally confirm its contents. The document records an agreement in which a debt on a private property was used as leverage to remove someone from my life, without my knowledge, without my consent." The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when 200 people simultaneously decide that breathing too loudly would be inconvenient. Mirai, in the chair beside him, was looking at the document with an expression that wasn't surprise. It was recognition, the expression of someone who had suspected certain things about certain families and was now seeing the suspicion confirmed on official letterhead. Kim Soo-yeon, for the first time in years, had no calculated smile on her face. "This alliance," Junho continued, "was built on terms I respect with regard to the business partnership between our groups. But I will not enter into a personal commitment whose foundation is other people's convenience." He looked at Mirai. "You deserve a marriage that is not this, and I'm not capable of offering you one." Mirai looked at him for a long second. Then she said very quietly, "I knew this arrangement had fractures, I didn't know where." A pause. "Thank you for being honest now, and not 10 years from now." "The Kang Group is not the legacy I've built," said Junho to the entire table, to his mother, to the aides and discreet cameras and all that architecture of expectations. "It's what I'll build from what is true, and what is true is in this document, and in the kitchen of this hotel, and in 7 years of a question I should have asked sooner." Yuna found out what had happened through Bomi, who found out through Park Ji-soo, who had been in the hall when Junho stood up. She stood still in the kitchen for a long moment after hearing. "So?" asked Bomi, without drama. "So nothing. He did what he thought was right. That doesn't change where I am. It doesn't change where you are, but it changes how you feel about where you are." Yuna didn't answer, but she removed her apron, hung it on the hook, and walked to the service area where there was a small window overlooking the hotel's side corridor. Junho was there. He hadn't gone to the kitchen, hadn't entered, hadn't made the grand gesture, He stood in the corridor, as if he knew that entering was a decision that needed to be hers, not his. She opened the door. "You knew," she said. "It wasn't an accusation, it was verification. I found out last night, spent the day confirming. And you broke off the engagement in front of 200 people because of a document." "I broke it off because it was the right thing. The document was the proof, they're different things." Yuna leaned against the doorframe. "Junho, I have nothing, you know that. I have a kitchen auxiliary job, a father with a weak heart, and a necklace I couldn't let go of because I'm apparently terrible at letting go of things that matter." "I know. And you think that's a beginning?" "I think it's honest, and honest is the only place I know how to start anything." She looked at him for a long moment, then looked at the necklace, touched the pendant and said, "Do you still have the other half?" "In a drawer for 7 years. That's slightly pathetic." "Quite pathetic, I agree." Yuna took a deep breath. "I'm not going into your life, Junho. You'll need to learn to exist in mine too." "That's fine," he said. "Teach me." 3 months later, on a Saturday morning with that light November cold that Seoul sometimes produces, Yuna was at a producer's market in the Mangwon neighborhood. She walked slowly through the stalls, checking ingredient prices with the seriousness of someone planning a menu, because she was. She had enrolled in a culinary business management course at night, and the idea of a small bistro was moving from fantasy into spreadsheets. Hunyo appeared at the vegetable stall beside her. No suit, no assistant, nothing that marked the surname. "This daikon is expensive," he said, looking at the price sign. "It's out of season, that's normal." "Then don't buy it." "I need daikon." "There's a stall further along with a better price, I checked." Hyuna turned to him with an expression that contained 7 years of accumulated patience. "You went to check daikon prices before running into me here." "I did reconnaissance," he said. "They're different things." She shook her head, picked up the daikon from the stall at the price listed, because she needed daikon and wasn't the kind of person to wait for the perfect deal when a reasonable one was available right now. Yunho walked beside her as she moved through the other stalls. He carried the bag when it got heavy, without making it a gesture. He just did it, the way someone notices a need and resolves it. They stopped at a taeok stall, and the elderly woman selling looked at the two of them with the smile of someone who spends her whole day watching couples on Saturday mornings. "How many do you want?" she asked. Yuna looked at Junho. Junho looked at Yuna. "2," she said. The woman wrapped them. Junho paid before Yuna could open her wallet, and when she opened her mouth to object, he said, "You paid for the daikon. The taeok is mine." "That's not a fair system." "It's a negotiated system. Different." She ate the taeok walking, with the November sun on the back of her neck and the noise of the market all around her. She glanced at him sideways, this man who had upended his own life in a room full of people and who was here now on a Saturday morning debating daikon prices as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe the most natural thing in the world are the simple mornings that remain after all the complication passes. She touched the necklace pendant out of habit. He noticed, said nothing. Sometimes the best proof that something is real is that it doesn't need to be declared out loud to exist.
If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe.